Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to wait another 30 seconds or so to give everyone an opportunity to hop on board. I will remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded.
Sam, is the convention to not have video on unless we're speaking?
No, the convention is going to be to have your video on if you are an official member of this subcommittee, and to keep your video and microphone off if you are not. Give it another about 10 seconds here, folks. All right, Inga.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Sammy Pirati. It is October 24th, 2022. It's approximately 3:32 p.m. This is the first meeting of the Benton County Tox Trash CUP Subcommittee. We have both members of the subcommittee and observers. All are welcome. What I'll first start off is by asking the members to keep their cameras on, and all the other folks to please close down your video and put yourself on mute. And we'll start off with introductions, a brief review of today's agenda, and then dive into the work before us. So in the order they appear on my screen, I'll ask Jeff to introduce himself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Convitz. I am an attorney at Miller Nash, and we represent Valley Landfills as a work.
Nancy?
Nancy Whitcomb, currently on the Planning Commission, amateur land use nerd, former registered architect, current recreational accountant.
Welcome. Ed?
Hi, Ed Patera, resident Corvallis, on the committee.
Welcome. Catherine?
Good afternoon, everyone. Catherine Bisco, City of Philomath, resident member of the work group.
Mark,
Mark Yeager, resident of Benton County, member of the Solid Waste Advisory Council, also a registered civil and environmental engineer in Oregon.
and then for those who are joining us, I'd like to have you take a minute, and introduce yourselves. We'll start off with Debbie.
Hi, I'm Debbie. I'm a member of SWAC and just observing today.
Welcome. Marge,
I'm Marge Pop. I'm on the work group and on the SWAC, and I'm just observing. Hi.
welcome. Camille,
Hi, I'm Camille Hall, and I'm a resident of Benton County. I live next to Coffin Butte, and I'm here to observe.
welcome.
Thanks.
Paul, you're on mute, Paul.
Paul Neatfeld, neighbor of the landfill, just observing today.
Welcome. Bob, you're on mute, buddy. Sorry. Bob, if you can hear me, maybe you can just put a note in the chat to introduce yourself. And if you get unmuted, we'll get you on ASAP.
You talking to me, Inga?
No, I'm not talking to you yet, Inga. Sorry.
Sorry.
No, Bob was just having some challenges with equipment. All right, Inga, perfect timing.
Inga Williams. I'm a planner with Benton County, and I'm helping out.
Welcome.
Co-host, I don't know.
Yes, you're co-facilitator today. So the agenda basically is to talk about the charge, talk about the process you all want to use to tee up that charge for formal work group consideration, to talk about what you would like to present to the work group this coming Thursday at its formal work group meeting, and then to set up future meetings for purposes of completing the subcommittee's work. In a nutshell, the charter has several elements. Element A is a called common understandings. So the goal is to develop common understandings. One of the subsets of that charge, in fact, is to look at to what extent, if any, has Republic complied with the past CUP conditions. And frankly, to get all those documents as close as possible to being in one place for community access and ready access for those who will come after the Benton County Talks Trash Work Group completes its work. The staff put together initially a document that was their first cut at putting all of the documents in one place and creating a format that would help us at least start organizing it and reviewing it so that it could tee up the question, does this document accurately reflect the current state of the CUP conditions and their compliance moving forward? That document then went to the work group, and work group members put together several comments, which were compiled again by Inga into one master document, which included initial responses to the member comments going forward. It is that document, at least to begin with, in its current form, that will be used to see how that information can be presented efficiently, clearly, accurately, and transparently to the work group for consideration as to whether it should be included in their recommendations. What will happen after that, as I mentioned, just to recap, is that we will talk about how we're going to go about this process and what you all want to do for Thursday's report out and then future meetings. So let's dive into an overview of the existing document, recognizing nothing's set in stone, and it's there for us to see, just get a handle on what we've seen so far. So Inga, would you be so kind as to share your screen with that document? And so if you can make it as large as you can for those of us of a certain age, like myself, who need a little bit more real estate. And there's, if you go up to the very top, there's a plus minus sign. Maybe if you hit that plus sign, it's at 75% now. Maybe you can make that a little bigger. And
Yeah, there's no plus minus sign on mine. Trying to get to the gallery
okay.
because it has, I can't see the screen share, so.
You might have to go out of stop screen share, enlarge it, and then re-share your screen.
Well,
That may
I can
be,
just, how's
oh,
that?
there. Yeah, perfect. That's,
You got it.
those are
Okay.
the buttons and refer to. So a brief,
Oh, I saw it. I thought you were talking about something in the, go ahead, sorry.
a brief overview of the document. The first section includes, well, I'll let you, Inga, describe the document. I mean, you were the author of it, and just the overall structure of the document, not the details of it, just so everyone's on the same page.
Well, the first part is just the table contents, so that's summary of all of the land use files that have occurred over the course of since 1994 for the landfill properties. And then we go into the actual files with a short description of what that file is for, the results of that land use action, and then a list of the conditions of approval for each land use action.
And let's stop right there, just add in, as you see on the right side of the page, there's a green 1, kind of a yellowish orange 2, and a red 3. Those were the very, very preliminary pulse taking polls of the work group members. And so on this particular condition of approval, those numbers stand for the following. 3 people indicated that they supported the language in that section as written. 1 person indicated that they could live with it, but they would like to perhaps tweak it or get more information. And 5 people indicated a disagreement for that particular document as one. And I promised to get you Nancy in a minute. I got to let somebody in and ask you if you could all raise your hands with the Zoom function so you don't have to keep your hands up. And I have a better shot of seeing you in the order you raised your hands. So Nancy will be first, but
I just want to point out that an additional instruction given to the work group was to pick 2 if they thought that there wasn't enough information given to make a decision. So 2 is a confusing choice in this poll.
Okay, well, let's get that confusion resolved by providing the information that you all think is needed to go forward and have a complete picture. So Inga, let's go up to the beginning of the document. The first task will be to look at the overall list of applications. I'm not asking to go into the comments, the committee member comments yet. I'm simply asking, based on your review of what you've seen, does this list include all the CUPs that are relevant? And if not, which particular CUPs are absent? The queue I have so far starts with Mark.
Thanks, Sam. I'd just like to clarify that it's probably more appropriate to call this a list of land use actions or land use proceedings, because not all of these are conditional use permit applications. There are zone changes in here. There's other sort of land use activities. So it seems like right from the very beginning, this is maybe a history of land use activities associated with the landfill. So I see up at the top here, it says compliance with past land use approvals. And so I guess maybe it's the subcommittee name that confused me. I didn't actually read the header of this. So
So is that sufficient as it is, or would you like to suggest something different?
no, I think that's probably sufficient, as long as maybe we should just, when referring to our committee, we can refer it to as the Land Use Review Committee or something like that. I don't know. Because some folks really think that conditional use permit applications are a separate entity, which they are. And this does include zone changes and a number of other activities.
Okay, so Inga, what I'm going to suggest is you insert a note or a context setting paragraph to orient folks that are reading this, especially for the first time, what this includes. Nancy and Mark, did you have something else before calling Nancy? Your hand is still up. No, Nancy.
Sorry about that. I took it down.
No problem, Nancy.
Yeah, so it would be nice. I've noticed that staff has got different letters. So there's a letter designation, and then there's a number, which is the year, and then there's another number, which I imagine is the number of land use that it was in the year. So in the case it was 1, it was very early in the year. It would be nice if it were explained to people what those letters and numbers stood for, just so that it's not so mysterious. Like I still don't know what an S is. And obviously some of them I know, but it would be nice to have like a legend maybe at the top, just to let people know who aren't like me, give them a little bit more information about what it is that they're looking at. That's all.
Thanks. So that could certainly be added and would add value to the reader to get context going forward. So the question on the table then is, are there any relevant land use approvals that need to be added to this list, so we can at least start off with a complete list? We'll get into what is said under each one of them in a minute, but does anyone have any to add? Nancy?
Yeah, and sorry, I didn't print out the copy that came in after the copy that we were supposed to comment on, so I'm not sure if all of these weren't included. I see the staff response on 1977. They couldn't find that. I'm pretty sure there was a CUP on that one because the landfill increased in area by, I think, 22 acres at that time. I don't know if the vacation of the Tampico Ridge subdivision was included. I'm not sure if the vacation at the end of Coffin Butte Road at that bridge was included. Do you want me to just keep going here?
Well, I think we should, let's take them one at a time and ask Inga, were they included? And if not, let's scroll down to where they'd be appropriate for at a minimum, put in a placeholder so we can come back and add those to the list if they're not already there. So what was the first one, Nancy?
So the first one, and nobody has, I have never seen any documentation on this, and the only thing I have ever seen is referrals to in other documentation that refer to an addition in 1977 of an additional 22 acres. And I think that would have had to be a conditional use permit because that was before the LS zone was created. And so, and that was a reason, part of the reason that the LS zone was created was because before the LS zone, they had to come in and ask the county every time they basically did anything. And I think that cell 2, I believe it is, was started in 1977. So I think there must have been a CUP on at that time, but nobody's been able to find it. Okay.
So before you go on, let's pause there. And Inga, is this ringing any bells? So you should, if you'd be so kind, is to drop a placeholder between 1 and 2. So after the comments to number 1 there and above 2, add a placeholder to capture the overall comments that Nancy gave, and then we'll come back and backfill them. The exercise at this point is just to identify the missing activities, and we'll come back and add to them.
Well, that's already on the list. She made that comment and I added it there. So it says committee member comments between 1 and 2.
I see.
1.5.
Okay, so that general comment is there and was there. And so what you're saying is you're unable to locate any files.
It would be helpful if Nancy, if you could tell me where those references that you're talking about are, so I can take a look at them myself, because I did a pretty exhaustive search and I could find nothing in 1977.
Well, I'm going to suggest that you take that offline, that be a homework assignment. We have the issue identified. Jeff Condit, I also asked that you would go and work with Republic's team and see what information you have surrounding this 1977 CP 77 question mark. Is that something you're familiar with already?
No, but we'll take a look at it. The records that we have on file prior to our ownership are not good. So I'm not going to promise to find anything, but I'll look for it.
Okay. Nancy, what was the next one that might be missing on your list?
That is 1988, and that was the vacation of the Tampico Ridge subdivision.
Okay, so let's get down to that and see if that's been. Okay, so that's been noted as a committee member comment. Inga, were you able to find any documents there?
Yes, we have that. We have those documents.
Okay, and so providing a link or a summary of those and what happened there in the same format that we've done from the past may be helpful to include. Nancy, what's up next?
I think you can see it there. It's vacation at the end of Coffin Butte Road. There you go.
Yeah, that was the one I was just referring to.
No,
And
that was a
she's-
different vacation. That was the Tampico Ridge subdivision was the first one. This is the end of Coffin Butte Road.
So Inga, do you have the Tampico Road one?
I do remember seeing something about that. That would have been put forward by Public Works. We don't get involved in vacations, but vacations of roadways, I should say. But I'm pretty sure I did see documents about that. I probably could find them.
So you can add that to your list there so that we have a complete list.
Mhm.
Thank you. What's next, Nancy?
So she has got the 1994 conditional use permit. Expansion, and there was a lot. Oh, I guess we don't care about. Are we caring right now about missing documentation, or are we not caring about that?
We're not caring about the missing documentation. We're just getting the complete list, and we'll backfill with missing documentation.
Then that was the last that I had noticed. Although
Okay,
I got kind of bored after 2000.
okay, Mark?
Thanks, Sam. Just a clarification for me, because I'm sort of new to looking at this document. So under that one that Nancy was just talking about, PC 94-11, I didn't understand what the strikeout was about. Yeah, on that page right there, there's a whole sentence or two that have been struck out. Maybe Inga could explain why that is formatted like that.
That's just to note that that's being removed, I guess, in the final document, because that is describing a different application, not this application.
That was just a copy paste error, Mark.
Oh, okay. All right, great. Thank you. And then one other thing that I didn't notice anywhere in here, and I'm sorry, I'm traveling, so I don't have my folder with some different documents in it. But I didn't see anything in this list of documents that that went through any land use proceedings to allow the quarry to exist. Unless the quarry is described as an outright use in the landfill site zone, it seems like there must have been some sort of land use action to allow quarry operations on the landfill site.
It's a permitted use, Mark,
It is an outright permitted use.
by right.
Okay, can you confirm that, Inga? That's why I said I don't have those documents. I don't have the, chapter 77 or whatever it is. That's the landfill site zone.
It is outright permitted.
All right, great. Thanks.
So any other additions to this list? Again, we're not going to talk about the merits of them yet. We're just talking about, do we have them all? Okay. All right, so let's go back to the top of that list and then pick up the comments that folks made and see how far we can get with those. So my recollection of this document, in several places, notations are there's missing documents, some have specifics, and Inga, what has the staff had time to do in response to begin with the bundle of comments? And before you answer that, I want to note that we have two new members on the call that I'd like to introduce people to and remind them that this meeting is being recorded. So I think, Tom, if you'd be so kind, or you did, Ginger Ginger, can you hear me? So she might have stepped away. Please help me remember to have her identify herself. It may well be Ginger Ruff of Republic. All right. So since the comments came in and you made your updates there, which includes the staff general comment, tell us what you've had a chance to do so far.
Well, we placed all of the land use documents that are identified here, this packets for the land use actions on the county's FTP website. And not the ones that were just mentioned as missing, but all of the ones where it says missing documentation. All the documentation that we have is now on the FTP website, and it's been available there for, I think, 3 weeks now.
Can you go to that and open it and let people sort of tiptoe through it?
Well, I would like to. I need to open up I revised this document actually, and this is not the revised one because there is a new link now. Unfortunately, with the FTP website, which is the only way we have of sharing large files, the link expires continuously.
It expired on the 12th. I was able to download it before then, but I'm pretty sure it's not functional right now unless you.
Yeah, because the link changed, unfortunately. That's what happens with this and this software that we are using. So if you want to keep going on, I can try and find this document while you're talking.
Well, that's pretty much the next step in the critical path here is to so folks can see that, because I think some of the next question is going to be to what extent, if any, do the provision of those files satisfy the committee member comments about missing information.
Yeah, I have to find. Oh, there it is. Sorry.
Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. So this link that's listed at the top of this document is no longer functional. Is that what I'm to understand?
Yes.
Correct.
And so
Okay.
a new link will be published. It looks like we're going to have to republish it every 2 weeks to keep it active.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And yes, it is Ginger Ruff from Republic Services. See, put something in a chat here for us.
So here are here's the website and all of the documents.
I can't see anything, so you might have to reshare your screen or close out and reshare. Is anyone else seeing anything besides a gray box? There we go.
Oh, it is now.
Yeah, here it is.
Prior land use applications. That's where all of the documents are. And there's nothing in there, so I have to put it back in there. It's very frustrating for me. I'm sorry, and I'm sure it's frustrating for you to have to keep putting these things back in here. If anyone can come up with a way to share without having to use this FTP website, let me know.
I don't know how to do it, but I have, I think, most of the documents. I didn't do a complete audit, but my impression is everything that was asked for was available on the site.
Yes.
So I think the general impression I have is that the missing document piece is, it's there. It's just, I don't know, 30, 40. Let me just check something here. Um, It's almost 1.5 gigabytes. So if you try to go through it in a meeting like this, you may be spending a lot of time with, just waiting for things to load and move. It's very
Okay.
expensive. I don't want anybody to take my word for it, but once the FTP site is available again, you may need an hour or two to go through and just check. So from just checking, is it there? My impression is it is. I just not have gone through all, I don't know, 100 files. I'd suggest that be a homework assignment for everybody to get comfortable with. I don't think you'll get through it in the next hour, Sam.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful suggestion. And so, Inga, if you can stop sharing when you have a second, and that is the working recommendation that Inga will send out, well, to the whole work group, but plus the subcommittee, the updated FTP link and magic password, recognizing it apparently has a 2-week shelf life. And then for folks then to go through that document, that website in light of the document, and then perhaps send to the subcommittee any particular documents that are missing that we should look for, and staff can go about doing that approach. Nancy?
Yeah, I have looked through many of these document packets, and the elements that seem to be primarily missing are applicant statements and meeting minutes from the decision-making bodies. And a lot of the problem is that a lot of the time it's the applicant statement where the real meat is, where the applicant says what they want to do and why. And that's really useful in establishing intent.
So, what is the state of the record surrounding applicant statements as just one example? I'm sure there's perhaps others, but. You're on mute, Inga, sorry.
I guess I was unmuted before, sorry. Anything that we have would be in these scanned packets, and anything that came in after these land use applications were closed would have been scanned to the file. So if we don't have it in this PDF file, then we don't have it.
This is what I meant by you have to go through each file, because let's take the first one, the main application, conditional use permit. When you peel apart the file or the grouping, they do have some of the names, instead of saying applicant statement, say burden of proof. And it's 40-page long. It's got a whole bunch of documents. Like I said, it's or figures rather. It's got aerial photos in it. There really is a lot in those files, and it just takes some time to go through. I again suggest folks just download everything and go through it and satisfy themselves for the sake of time, group time.
Right. And Jeff, if Republic can do that as well, and then send us any missing documents that should be part of the record, that would be a helpful value add. So if something didn't, for whatever reason, get into it, you could get it into it. Nancy?
This is Jeff. I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead, Jeff.
I can't find the raise my hand icon on my screen here. So
I see.
I'll find it in. But the only other thing I would know is that, you know, particularly for some of these earlier applications, the applicant's narrative may not have been required. So, are you people not hearing me?
You're a little faint on my end, at least. I have some headsets on, I don't know about other folk.
It's very muffled.
Yeah, I
Very
can't hear-
muffled, yeah.
Can't hear a word
Can't-
he's saying.
Can't understand what you're saying. I can hear you saying something, but I can't understand anything.
Is this better?
That seems better, Jeff.
Yeah, that's much better.
Sorry. Every time I use a different format here, it reconnects my different devices. So the thing I was pointing out is particularly on the older applications, there may not have been an applicant's narrative required. So we'll go back and look. We'll check on all of these applications to see if we have any additional information. It may not be there because it may not have been required back in the day.
Okay, Nancy?
Yeah, it looks like the guy who did a lot of the work for the various incarnations of the landfill back in the day, Jeffrey Tross, is still in business in Salem. And so you might get in touch with him and see if he's got anything in his old files. He might just have stuff socked away in mildewed files in a shed someplace.
Okay. So thank you for that. I think we've done as much as we can this afternoon on this particular topic. And then if you can go back to sharing the master document, that'd be great.
And I have
All right.
I just uploaded all the land use files back to the FTP site, so they're there now.
Thank you. And is there going to be a password and a new link that you can put in the chat?
Well, it's this updated compliance with past land use files approvals document that you did not get. So you will be getting it. It'll be linked to the website.
Okay.
And instead of the other one.
Okay. So let's use this one. And at the end, if you'll send it to me, because I will want to upload it to the BCTT website as well. All right. So it looks like we have that list. We've got progress being made on uploading the documents. Are there any other hanging chads on this first portion of the document, which is, as I think Inga used the term, table of contents of these various actions that have taken place in the past? Anything else there? Because if there's not, we can then make the appropriate references and note that these issues have been resolved for the time being at a minimum, and then come back through and clean up what we need to clean up. Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. So I'm not sure. Well, I'm certainly not ready to say that all these issues have been resolved. I mean, it will, as Bob was talking, it looks like it, or Ed was talking, it looks like we're going to need to look at these documents and see and identify whether or not there's gaps missing, or at least that's certainly what I would like to do. So
that is what we're going to do. Absolutely. That's the next step. But for this for this meeting, I don't know that talking about it will get us any further, but if there's more details we could work out to make it more efficient, let's talk about them.
Oh, no, that's fine. I guess I would just note that the subcommittee is going to go off and take a look at these documents and try to ascertain whether or not we have all the information that we think we might need, rather than saying it's resolved. Sorry, I didn't know how you were characterizing it there.
Yeah, and I could have mischaracterized it, but for which I apologize. I just want to make it clear that we've got a plan. For purposes of this rest of this meeting, we have a plan in place to continue the analysis, to finalize it. Yeah. But for the moment, we've sort of talked about, we need to get this information. You all need to look at it. You need to make requests if something in particular is missing. Condit's going to come back and provide any documents he has. And all that will be geared up for our next subcommittee meeting. All right, Nancy.
Yeah, so I did notice that the title of this is, it's conditional use permit or land use action compliance. And there have been a couple of land use actions that have been denied. And I was wondering, what is the status of including those in this list?
Well, are they listed now, the denials?
They are.
Okay, so it's the caption then that needs to be clear, it sounds like. So maybe the old caption that we had on the initial document might be more generically appropriate. So I don't have it in front of me what the old caption was, but that's something Mark commented on and seemed to work for folks. What was it, Inga? Do you have that old caption handy?
I'm sharing the screen. Are you not seeing it?
Compliance with past land use approvals. So it's the compliance. If it was denied, they're not complying. So it can just say, perhaps it's something like past land use actions and their status or something. Would that work, Nancy? As a generic title or something better?
I just wondered, I wondered two things. I wondered if we were going to be including land use denials, and if we were, we should probably change the title. But I wasn't sure whether the goal was to include those as well.
Absolutely. I thought I asked, are they there? And I thought I heard the answer was those denials are there. Are there some that are missing?
We looked at missing things, but we didn't look at things that were there that shouldn't have been there. And so I didn't know whether that was something that we were going to be discussing as well.
Okay, so are there things there that shouldn't be there?
That was the question I just asked.
Well, do you think there are some things there that shouldn't be there?
No, but I was just wondering whether we were also including denials.
Well, the material that came for this meeting, there was a file that was landfill land use decisions PDF that has denials in it as well as the approvals.
Inga, does this document ring a bell to you?
It was put on the website about a week ago.
I think Daniel went through and joined up all of the staff notices of decisions for each of the land use actions, and he combined them.
Yeah, it says
that might be what you're discussing.
Yeah, it says, the pages have got like a Benton County logo, Development Department, memorandum, March 1995, blah, 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 and, closing of files, approving things, denying things, continue to.
I think it's just the notices of decision that went out, right? Yeah.
Yeah, except for like the first document, That's a decision document from 74, but my computer is too slow to move all these files. I'll get it to you. The point being, that's a key one that has the original, I think the original basis for the landfill. So
I guess, go ahead, Ed.
you know, I just urge people to go through the files that we've been sent.
So I guess my hope, if it makes sense, is that there be one master document on this topic, sort of one-stop shopping for folks. If there needs to be 2 parts or 3 parts to it, you know, then great. But my questions, which I apparently did not ask correctly, I thought, this document on the screen, Inga, does it contain actions where requests were denied? You're on mute, Inga.
Second time that's happened. Yeah, we identify the land use actions that were denied. So I'm not sure what, Nancy, what you want to have in this document that's not there now.
I was just wondering if that was part of the mandate to include those as well. They were included. It's fine with me. I just was trying to get some clarity on whether that was the intent of the committee, the subcommittee.
Well, they can be removed if I'm not sure.
No, you need the 2021 denials. So.
Yeah, I mean, look at just you know, I'm gonna make a recommendation here that if we're gonna have this is part of a common understandings history document. One element, it was CUP compliance. There's an overall history aspect to this too, to get into one place all the relevant information so that people coming behind us could see it. So we absolutely should include the complete history, be they denials, partial denials, acceptance, what have you. So it's just a mechanical issue, is if the document that Ed just called our attention to and this one can be merged or somehow presented together as opposed to independent documents that make it more difficult for people to track and see the whole history, especially if they're new to that history. Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I agree with you. This should be a history of land use actions associated with this property. And whether it's approval, denial, whatever, the idea is to create the full record, part of which includes documenting the history of the land use actions, and part of which includes what conditions of approval were previously issued as part of the land use actions, whether or not there's been compliance with those conditions of approval. So it should be a complete history, including any land use actions that resulted in a denial of a request.
Okay. Anything more for the good of order on that topic? So to summarize, what Inga is going to do is at the beginning of the document, add a legend, definition of terms, make it clear what it contains. Add in the second document that Ed just referred to it in order that makes sense, or presentation format that makes sense. So as Mark says, we have the complete history of actions, regardless of what they are, all in one place. You all are going to look at the new FTP link and decide if there's anything more that you would like to ask, and send that to your colleagues here on this call. All that will be added into an updated version of this first section, So we have the document as it will have progressed over the next week or 10 days between now and our next subcommittee to look at and then continue to refine and review. So that would be this first part of the document. Any additions, subtractions, corrections, improvements to that general work plan? Hearing none, let's go with that. We can also always modify it on the fly when we come up with better ideas. So now we'll go down to the body of the document and we'll talk a little bit about this at the 100-foot level, 10,000-foot level, whatever level makes sense. Because I don't believe any, or other than a small handful received a consensus. So remember, the polling protocol is a proposition is made either by me in a meeting orally based on the potential emerging consensus, or there's something like here, which is, do you agree with the summary status for and conditions of approval for CP 74-01? Right. It means everyone votes a 1 or a 2 after all the information is in and they get all that information. Okay. These are nothing more than to take your pulse and generally see how we're doing, to scope out how much time we're going to need to do it. As far as I'm concerned, those polling numbers can go away and we can start fresh with a whole new analysis based on this subcommittee, so it can make its recommendations to the entire work group for its consideration. This document is a staff-driven document with the opportunity for comment by work group members and of course the subcommittee first. So the goal would be to bring it to as much consensus as we can between the subcommittee before it's presented to the entire work group. But there are quite a number of conditions here. And, we are not adjudicating what this subcommittee, nor is the work group adjudicating whether or not that status is correct, because we don't have the authority to do that. I think the best we can do is maybe end up with positions that in the status column there, that staff believes X, Republic believes Y, and other members of the subcommittee and ultimately the work group believe A, B, C, D, and E. And then the document taken as a whole would be given to the full work group to say, does this accurately reflect the differing points of view on the conditions of approval and status thereof? So it's a big mouthful. So let's open that up to questions, comments, suggestions for improvement. I saw Ed, then I saw Mark.
The document, if we take this 1974 one, there are conditions outlined. One of them is actually highlighted in footnote 3, in the sense that it gives the general areas of collection that's allowable for the landfill, meaning there's like 9 regions that are allowed to send material to the landfill. I think those kinds of highlights that are maybe less than a page on each of these approvals, it would be useful to have them available to folks really quickly and not have to go back to the source document. And I don't, it's just part of the history. It's not taking a position on it. So it's like having a synopsis instead of just the title in the conclusion. What did this approval do? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so what specifically would you suggest be added to the footnotes or to the body of the document? And the order I have, so you don't have to keep your hands up, is Ed, Mark, Nancy.
We can do it as footnotes, or we can do it as saying the service areas. If you look at footnote 3, that's up there now.
Yeah.
It says the general areas. It's like including the general areas. It's the end of the first line of footnote 3.
Yep.
Those are the areas that we're supposed to be getting materials from in this document. Only those areas. It doesn't allow for materials outside of these areas.
Yep.
So I think that's something you put there in the actual quote from the conditional use approval, and it's a condition. It's a historical condition. And then people can argue about it afterwards. But some of these are just getting the facts out. So it's good to have the title and what it addresses, but what are some of the facts that are articulated in that document?
So Inga, this would be a task that would fall on your shoulders. Do you feel, do you have enough information to take an updated shot at this? And so I'm just basically suggesting you and Ed talk this through here while we're all together. And so you would know what the next step would be for further refinement of the document.
Well, we can do it offline. I can take the first few pages of this document and just circle it and send it back to you saying, this is what I'm talking about as an example. Would that be okay?
That would be fine. I think that you want me to link
Yep, that would be
the documents that are relevant to each of these conditions.
That's another way to do it. Yep, that's another way to do it. But if you could just give a few highlights in there so people know, oh, this has got the area we're supposed to gather stuff from listed, or oh, this one references control of water going off-site. It's got to have a few kind of headlines in it. And I'm suggesting keeping it honest and just taking the conditions approved. And, in many cases, there's only like 10 or 20 lines. If we use the same font as the footnotes, we can probably fit them in without making too many extra pages. So then somebody, when they read this and say, okay, this is the common understanding, oh, and this is what's in that document, I want to read this. And then you have the link. How does that sound to you, Sam?
That sounds perfect. Yeah. Nancy's up next.
Yeah, I'd just like to tag on to what Ed said. I think it would also be very useful to have, at each one of these snapshots in time that is determined by, some kind of land use action or proposed land use action, what the volumes were coming into the landfill at that time. Like, for example, here in that document that Ed was just referencing, the projected annual waste volumes, 1977 through, and the 74 document is really from 1977. So that's an interesting thing here. But anyway, the projected landfill volumes were 94,700 tons per year. I mean, current landfill volumes are 1.1 million tons per year. And so you can expect that there has been a big change in what happens to get that much more waste brought in. And I think it's people don't really, like a lot of that stuff just goes into the memory hole. And you kind of assume that everything is always the way that it has been. And I think it would be really useful to have, when it's available and when it's listed in these documents, a
Right.
volume snapshot. Ed, is that okay with you?
Yeah, only if it's listed. I don't want to, I don't want to give people the impression that extraneous stuff has been put in there for perspective. Perspective comes later in the report. This is
Page
going to be what
48 of
everybody agrees on. If there's a
Page
number
48
that says, if there's a
page
number
48
that says it's 4,000 tons a year, yeah, put it in there.
It's page
But-
48 of 262.
I'm not sure what you're speaking of. That's all. I don't even know which document you're referring to. But it may be
Alright.
the original one, and that's fine. Then it goes in there. That's good.
Cool.
Okay, so a couple things are going on. I want to make sure we don't lose track and we know what we're doing going forward. So what I'm understanding the ask to be is where these land use actions note as a condition volume, for lack of a better term, or things like where do they come from, that they be made clear in this left-hand column as the first step. Inga, reactions, thoughts? Or is that, have you done that already, or?
No, I haven't done that already. I thought the one of the subcommittees tomorrow is discussing the life of the landfill and the history of that.
They are, but that's why that was going to be my segue to the next topic. The what has actually come in, and what was stated in these conditions, if you will, could be two different things. In other words, restated in the condition, and I have no idea what these things say, but in the condition, it could say, thou shalt not bring more than 250,000 tons under this condition. The document that the other group is working on tomorrow will then show what actually went in and to the landfill. So I don't know that piece, the compliance piece, would necessarily end up here, certainly not now. Maybe at the end when we tie them, all these various documents together, that could be a cross-reference in the right-hand column that says, please see capacity reports for actual tonnage delivered. That's the distinction that I see going forward.
So unless there was an actual limit placed in the condition of approval, there is no regulatory authority to limiting the amount of garbage that came into the landfill. And I don't recall there being any such item in any of the conditions of approval. If it was placed anywhere, it would probably have been in the franchise agreements.
Which is, I was going to get to that, but it's as good a time as any because we have context for that. One of the homework assignments that I gave, or I think either gave to or Republic volunteered for, and may well be talked about in the so-called legal subcommittee that's meeting tomorrow, is the interplay between all these franchise agreements and these conditions. And Jeff, does this ring any bells to you, or maybe it was just a figment of my imagination that was a suggestion that that be also looked at, the franchise agreement?
No, I agree with that, and I was actually going to make that point, is there's a limitation of things that can be considered as part of the CUP, and volume into the landfill and regulation of business practices are not part of those. It's impacts on surrounding neighbors. And in the franchise agreement, that's where the business regulations go, and that's a negotiated contractual part. So you really can't understand one without having the other. And so I think if we're going to do this for the land use approvals, it would be helpful to have that same thing for franchise agreements over time. And sorry, I suggested that, Inga.
So does it make sense to start that franchise agreement exercise as a separate document and then figure out if it makes sense to keep it separate or it makes sense to cross-reference it or merge it with this document? I'm not necessarily care where we end up as much as what's the better part of Val or process-wise as to where to start the creation.
Well, my opinion, it should be a separate document because it is not the same thing. And it is a separate regulatory authority that the county and other public bodies have. And we ought not to get them confused because there'd be dragons that way.
I agree with Mr. Condit. Land use is land use and addresses compatibility issues. And that's what zoning is for. The franchise agreement is a separate economic concern for the lawmakers in the county. It's a completely different set of considerations that they undertake when they're making those types of decisions. But land use has got a very specific goal, and that goal is to ensure that incompatible uses do not have adverse consequences one upon the other. It's very clean. And I think that should be the focus of this particular subcommittee.
Okay, there's two issues there if I'm tracking. One is, seems like we have a emerging consensus, if not the reality of a consensus, they should be separate documents. So that sounds great, separate documents. Yeah. The next question is which subcommittee or subcommittees they go to. I am suggesting that franchise agreement discussion start off with in the legal committee, because that's the closest, given their separate nature, that's the closest fit for the people that have that knowledge there. Then that information can be brought over to this subcommittee or presented side by side to the full work group. But I'm not sure we have the time to vet them in both places, if that was the idea.
In point of fact, discussions of volumes and area regions that waste would be hauled to the landfill from were actually included in applicant statements for land use action, I think primarily to reassure neighbors that the impacts would not be great. And all of these decisions were very controversial. Well, most of them were. One of them was not in 83, 84. And so sometimes you'll find the same information in both places. And in the case of the 1973 conditional use permit application, there is reference to projected volumes, and there is reference to regions that are the only regions that waste can be hauled from.
Okay, so the order I have is Ed, then Mark, and then we're going to have to wrap up to talk about Thursday's meeting and next meeting times for the subcommittee. So Ed, then Mark.
Question on the franchise agreements. If we could do it for Thursday, is just a quick summary. How many are there? And what their dates were? Just a simple list, not a discussion. It just helps stitch the timeline together of land use, or actually maybe that's the thing to do, have a timeline for a land use decision, and that shows land use decisions and shows franchise agreement periods. So you can start to weave them together. Does that one make sense?
Certainly makes sense to me.
It's kind of like a one pager.
Yeah, it's a visual and it sets the context, because we're not going to be diving much below. We're not going to be diving at all below that time wise on Thursday.
No, so like, for example, when I question these things as I read them to myself, I don't know whether there's already a commitment out there to 2050, because I read one document that said it's a 50-year agreement, or refers to a 50-year franchise. So this is what would be helpful for just perspective.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
Suggestion. Thank you. Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. So I tried to raise my hand earlier, and then you asked us to put our hands down, and then the conversation went past. I have a very basic question, because I've sort of been looking at this document for a very short period of time. So if you could just go up to move that document up a little bit the other way, please. Whoop, down just a little bit more. The very first one that shows conditions of approval. I just want to make sure I understand what's going on here. A little bit farther down, Inga, please. That's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you. So this under the conditions of approval column, this one that is listed with a number 1, that represents an actual, this is a question I'm asking in clarification for me and maybe for members of the public, that represents the actual language from the condition of approval that was part of the land use decision. Is that correct? This is verbatim language from the condition of approval?
Correct.
Oh, great, thank you. And then under the status, this is right now, this represents the staff's I guess the staff's opinion of the status of the particular condition of approval.
Yes.
Okay, great. So that's true all the way through the rest of this document. Anytime there's a number associated with the conditional approval, that's the verbatim condition of approval. And the only thing that's happened here under status is staff's understanding of what the current situation is.
Yes.
Great. So that might be useful to clarify under the status, that in fact this is staff's understanding of what the current status is, rather than having it as it, because I didn't understand who wrote that section under the status, and I think that's helpful to understand. Thank you.
Well, I think the objective is to get the status updated by whoever has the information to update that. So if Valley Landfill has the information that would update that status, then we would input that. Or if any of the committee members have that information, then we would update that. So it's not just, it won't just be staff at the end with that status.
Yeah, that was eliminated in the 1983 LS zoning. That particular one.
So just for processing, where it says status now, we'll probably come up with a different word for that. But there's going to be 3 bullets. Instead of additional research needed, it's going to be staff. And then below that, it's going to be Republic. And below that, it's going to be member comments or member submissions. And so to be clear then, Staff is going to write what the staff believes is accurate. Republic is going to write what Republic thinks is accurate. Ultimately, the members of the work group will write what they think the accurate status is of that. And I think that's going to be the exercise. We're not going to vote on, all right, folks, 1974 CP 7401, condition of approval 1, you got 3 options here: staff, Republic member, or individual member submissions. Who wins? Because it's not going to be, we don't have the jurisdiction to make a decision if they're in compliance or not. If there are areas, if we have time to go back and reconcile those 3 possible status categories, then we'll do it to get as much fidelity and consensus as we can. Does that make sense, or not, is that nonsense? All right, we'll go with that and until I hear something else.
I think it's important to look at the overall land use action, and because these conditions of approval come into effect when staff or the planning commission or residents in the area of an application voice concerns or problems, and conditions of approval are designed to overcome those problems and to ease incompatibility between different theoretically incompatible uses. And so I think it's important to note the conditions of why the conditions of approval were put in place. I mean, having read the contemporaneous newspaper articles, and in some cases the testimony that was given, it becomes clear about why these things were put in place. And I think that I think there's more complexity than just, do you agree or disagree that has been complied with? I mean, part of the problem is why was that put in place in the first place?
Okay. We'll see what we have time to do. I mean, I think our job is to provide common understandings of information, teeing it up. The interpretation of that moving forward is for the processes that begin after our work group ends. And so we are just creating a document that creates a better beginning to any subsequent analysis than we have now. So I'm not sure we're going to be able to dive below and get anywhere close to coming up with why those conditions were put in place. The reality is they were, and the question becomes for the other groups, what are you going to do about them now? If a new expansion CUP comes in, or what are you going to do with this information now?
I think we could resolve that by footnoting them to different areas in the document files where objections that those conditions of approval are designed to ease are voiced.
Other thoughts from committee members? Because I need to move here in the next minute or so to some more mechanical pieces. Catherine?
Yes, I just want to note that I appreciate the perspective that Nancy's coming from. And I do think if there's any way for us to find that time, those conditions of approval really can be very pivotal pieces of land use decisions. And if we can provide that context without a major lift, looks like a lot of that information is kind of laying very close to where we're working. I think that's going to help us come with more meaningful and better recommendations for this next process. So I do want to say that I support that if we can capture that information, that's probably got meaningful value in this process here.
Inga, how would you go about implementing that ask?
Well, it would probably be in the staff report, most likely. Hopefully, there would be some discussion from the planner as to why they put a condition in there. That would be the most likely source that I could think of.
Okay. I'm just making a note here a second.
Meeting minutes are also very valuable sources.
Most of the meeting minutes I've seen are very short and have very little explanation to them.
So what kind of time commitment and both number of hours and how long do you think this would take if we were to add this task?
Quite a few hours. And it would not be my primary task at this point. I have to finalize a draft community wildfire protection plan. So.
Okay. Well, we'll table this for now, but I've got the note. Mark?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I also agree that the conditions of approval and some of the rationale behind them are important, but it may not be important for each and every one of these past land use actions. So maybe if I think there are probably some more critical or more important of these land use actions that have happened in the past, and maybe if we identified a couple or three of those to say that these are important land use actions, and they may have bearing on consideration, planning commission or the board of commissioners future consideration of another conditional use permit. It provides some context in terms of community concerns or issues. I mean, my experience with the most recent land use proposal was that the conditions of approval that were proposed and ultimately denied by the planning commission were an effort to fix many issues that were identified during the process. And I think that's really important as we move forward. So I'd like to support the idea, but maybe we narrow the window by trying to identify some of the more important previous land use actions.
Right. All right. So moving on to the mechanics here is on Thursday, each subcommittee is going to have 15-20 minutes to report in on what you all have accomplished. My draft imagery for these sessions is that they be member run, not facilitator staff run. And so while Inga will be part of supporting the subcommittee to tee up this subcommittee report and ask for input from the work group at large, are there two folks that would like to volunteer to, if you will, take the mic, take the stage, and summarize on Thursday what has gone on so far and what our plans are for moving forward?
I vote for Mark to do that.
I'm actually not a member of the work group, and I was going to suggest, Sam, that it seems a little bit premature that we would be giving that the subcommittee would be giving a report at this point, because really all we've done today is talk about mechanics and sort of clarifying our process. I don't know if that's all that meaningful, particularly to take up 15 or 20 minutes of the entire work group's time.
Well,
So
I
just-
do, yeah, I appreciate that. I do think it's meaningful for the rest of the people to know what the subcommittees are doing. If you don't take up the whole 15, 20 minutes and it's a 7-minute and 13-second presentation, that's fine. But I think understanding some of the nuances here of the process and how we're going about it and seeing if that makes sense to folks makes sense. So the subcommittee isn't doing things in between meetings that the work group as a whole may think are problematic. Ed?
I'd like to do that.
Okay.
It won't take 15 minutes, probably be more like 5 or 6.
And that's fine. Catherine, is your hand up from before or are you volunteering? Uh-huh. Last call. Otherwise, it's going to be the Ed and Inga show.
Sam,
Unless Mark,
Sam, could you clarify whether non-work group members can make these updates?
I'm happy with them doing that. If the rest of the members on this call are, I'm happy with doing it, having the Mark do it.
Well, I'm certainly happy for Ed to do it. I'm not in town, so I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be there in person this time. And my experience at the last meeting was that seems like the virtual connections are pretty challenging. So maybe next time at the next meeting, if that's appropriate, maybe Ed and I can share, that would be fine. But I'm certainly happy to have Ed do it.
And I don't think it has to be the same person every time.
No.
Sure.
We can semper gumby, always be flexible. All right, the final agenda item here, I'm sorry, we'll be a few minutes late, are the next 2 meetings. The next work group meeting after Thursday, the next work group meeting, subject to the Board of Commissioners approving an updated work plan, is going to be on November 17th, or it's likely to be on November 17th. In a perfect world, which I understand we do not live in, each subcommittee, if it could meet twice between now and then, that would be ideal. The proposal that I'll throw out there, just because it has some familiarity to it and it's quick, is whether or not folks would be willing to meet sort of the same time and same location and place on, let me get to my calendar here, same time, 3:30 to 5, and do that on November 7th and November 14th, which are basically work this time, and we're hoping, perhaps beyond hope, that they might work again as an opportunity for the next round. So it'd be November 7 and November 14, 3:30 to 5. If you can just like check your calendars and give us a thumbs up or thumbs down, so we have an idea if we can. And then we'll have all the 4 work committees, work groups, subcommittees, kind of in a pattern of Monday, Tuesday meetings.
Sam, I'll just say that sometimes I have council work sessions at 5 p.m. That might be on the 14th. But also I can't always escape from work at 3:30, but I don't also want to rearrange everybody's schedule if this time works. So.
Okay. Ed, what's your availability on those 2 days?
It seems okay. The first one, I'll be in California and I don't have the best of Wi-Fi connections. So it might be via phone if that's okay.
Oh yeah, that's fine. And by the way, that's why Yahweh invented Starbucks too, buddy.
Okay.
Nancy, what's your availability like on those 2 afternoons?
The 7th looks bad. The 14th looks iffy. I thought that the way we arranged the first meeting was pretty good.
I can certainly have Amelia send out a doodle poll. We'll probably have to wait to send that out until Wednesday to see where the other, the first subcommittee meeting that we had today was the SMMP, and they're going to meet those 2 days in the morning. So we'll see where the other 2 subcommittees that meet tomorrow want to meet. Then we'll have a better idea of the available slots, and I can send out a doodle poll because I'd like to get as many of the work group members in attendance at that. Otherwise, it kind of defeats the purpose. So with that said, that's what we'll do on Wednesday. We'll send out a doodle poll with the gaps in the staff schedule for those 2 weeks to see what we can do. Last call for any comments, questions, suggestions moving forward. Hearing none, thank you and have a great afternoon.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Evening, take care.
Evening, yeah.
Here.
Good night.
Evening, yeah, bye-bye.
Good night.